How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Rakuyo's Deciduous Bonsai channel. I'm your host, Andrew Robson. In my garden here at Rakuyo Bonsai, we're in Portland, Oregon, and we specialize in creating, maintaining, and working on outstanding deciduous bonsai. And so I have Maciek on the camera.
Hello, hello.
You probably know Maciek if you follow our Rakuyo's Deciduous Bonsai podcast. We appreciate it if you tune into that. Today what we're doing is a little bit of a garden walkthrough. We're going to do some rapid fire work, some late summer rapid fire work on a few trees. And we're going to start with this beech that I have here. So this is a European beech. And it got pruned back about a month ago, and we're seeing some response from that pruning. What I'm going to come in and do today is kind of pinch back the strong response. It's kind of a late pinch or an early prune. It's kind of floating in between there, so I'm probably going to have to use some scissors rather than just do my fingers.
So you feel safe doing cuts like this now, even though we're sort of past the cutoff?
I do, because this is more of a pinch than it is a prune. What we're going to do is we're going to take the area that's responding really strongly, and rather than have that kind of really get juicy and kind of outcompete the rest of the response, I want to keep everything in proportion on this type plant. So we're going to come in here. We're still going to retain the new growth. I just don't need, that growth tip. So basically cutting off the active growth tip on a lot of these, keeping some of that new growth. But I'm not trying to kind of beef these things up or really put a lot of juice into this section of the tree. It's the strongest part of the tree, so it's the area where I want it to kind of be slowed down and maintain the most. And so that's really all that we needed to do. I see on the other side of the tree there's a little bit more work that we can do, but yeah, this is just kind of editing what's been done on this tree before, and making sure that it's growing in a really kind of balanced way moving forward.
Is this a practice that you're kind of roving around and doing to all the trees?
Yeah, it's when you have a really big full garden like I do. We have over 100 large deciduous bonsai here, and so for a quick kind of 1-minute job, it doesn't make a lot of sense to like spend my
to haul it in.
to haul it in to hurt my back even more. So it's just a good way to kind of just do some quick tasks around the garden. Now, if this needed like more extensive or major work, I would definitely pull it in, sit down with it, spend some time with it. But for kind of a few little kind of edits or adjustments, just leaving it here, walking around with scissors and a little trash bin, that does just fine. So.
Do the red leaves, is that indicative of this being a copper beech?
This is a copper beech, yeah. So when the leaves are fresh, they are this really nice red, purple, pink color. And then as the leaf gets older and older, some of these older leaves that you'll see here are leaves that have been here for probably several months. So we have the new leaves, we have the old leaves. And kind of the mix of the two is the color pattern that you're seeing.
So will they revert to copper later in the fall?
They will. So in the spring they're red. In the summer they're kind of a purplish green, and then in the fall they get a little bit more red again. So before they turn brown. So.
Very cool.
Yeah, these were just kind of seedlings that I collected. So the interesting thing that you'll see on here is like some of these are super red and some of these are a lot more green. And the difference between the red and the green here is just seedling selection. So these were seedlings off the same copper beech tree. There's an old kind of heritage copper beech tree that I get seedlings from every year in Portland. And this one would actually be a desirable one if we were in the nursery business, because this one stayed a lot more purple in the summer versus these kind of went more green. So again, they're seedlings, same age, from the same parent tree, but this one has a little bit more purple to it. So if we wanted to lean into that purple, like this is one that I would choose to propagate and graft versus this green one, I might not.
So they're all related and they're going to behave fairly similarly, but they'll have a little bit of variation nonetheless.
Yeah, and that variation is what can make the difference between a named variety and just kind of your average run-of-the-mill kind of purple beech. So
very cool.
So yeah, a little bit of trimming on that. Let's go over to a styrax. We'll take a look at some of these trees over here. So these styrax here need a little bit of adjustment. So this is Styrax japonica, Japanese snowbell. and wonderful species for bonsai, something I think a lot more people should be growing and utilizing. Um, this is a great species because it can grow really well in hot climates. So if you are listening to this episode and you're down in the southeast, if you're in places where it gets really hot and humid, this is a really, really great plant for that. Even in Portland, where we don't have a ton of heat and humidity in the growing season, this tree has been defoliated, I think, twice, if not 3 times. So,
and you already have quite long extensions on it. I can see at the top quite a
we
few
do, but
extensions.
if you notice the extensions here, it's not everything is extending equally. So part of the work that I'm going to be doing right now is kind of a balancing effect. These extensions that are growing, there may be 30% of the extensions on the tree are quite strong, and the rest of these didn't really respond that well. So in this stage of the tree's development, I want fairly balanced, even growth. So what I'm going to be doing is coming in here and nibbling back. This is kind of a late pinch, and ideally this could have been done a little bit earlier, but not everything happens at the ideal point, even in a professional garden. But we're just going to kind of nibble back this strong growth so that everything is growing a little bit more balanced and a little bit more evenly. What I don't want is 30% of the branches on the tree to get really strong and thick and coarse, and the other branches to stay fairly weak. So this is just going to kind of reset the scales, kind of balance everything out together, and kind of make things grow at a much more balanced rate.
Are these viable cuttings? Could these be taken as cuttings at this point?
They're probably not good for cuttings just because they haven't really lignified. Like I said on the last tree, this isn't necessarily like a solid prune. This is more of like a late pinch. I can't pinch it with my fingers, so I am using the scissors to do this. But
it's somewhere between being that fleshy green and a proper wood.
Yeah, it's just, ideally this probably would have got done with a pinch maybe a couple weeks ago, but it got missed while I was on a work trip, and we had a fair bit of heat, so it probably grew pretty strong on the last few days when that heat came out. But this is just going to allow everything to grow a little bit more balanced. So I'm not really necessarily worried about having time for regrowth or anything like that. It's just going to allow things to grow in a much more kind of balanced way.
So you're not necessarily planning for a big response from this. You're just making sure that it sets the buds that you want, where you want them, and then pushes budding priority sort of inside into the interior.
Yeah, to elsewhere. The weaker stuff that's not really growing or responding.
Yeah. So it seems like a theme for cuts at this time.
It's less of a kind of pruning, trying to get a big overall response, and pruning everything, and just pruning the strong stuff so that the weaker stuff behind it has a chance to catch up and grow more evenly to the strong stuff. So I'm still doing the same thing that I do with normal trimming, leaving, a couple leaves. With a alternate leaf plant like this, you want to leave at least 2 buds or leaves if you're trying to still gain more ramification than what you started with. So we're still doing the same kind of process of trimming. It's just kind of an early trim, more of a late pinch to be doing this. And so it's just kind of doing, some follow-up work. The main work that was done to cause this was this tree was brought in the studio, every single extension was trimmed, and everything that had a long runner was defoliated. So this is the response from that technique. And rather than kind of respond in the same way of what we did last time, we're just kind of editing that response so that the strong growth gets knocked back so that everything grows a little bit more evenly.
There's definitely an impression that I have in this garden that you're always ramifying. Always be ramifying is almost a mantra for the branching.
That's right. If we're not in building mode, and this tree has a perfectly fine trunk, primary branch kind of set, so I'm not kind of actively seeking to build any more parts of this tree. So in this case, yes, we're definitely just kind of totally ramifying at this stage. The thing I love about Styrax is these ramify so quickly. It's kind of crazy. Like this tree was a telephone pole years ago. This was a stock plant from Telperion Farms, and I asked Chris Kirk, I was like, can I buy that tree? He's like, oh, that one's not for sale. It's a stock plant. I said, oh, but there's actually could be a nice bonsai in there. So he kind of looked at me and said, if you want to start turning it into one, go ahead. And so this was like a 10-foot tall, just telephone pole not long ago. And after doing a couple chops on it, You know, we've been in the span of like 5 years, we've been able to really develop a lot of branching in a short period of time. So a lot of that's just like the type of techniques that we teach and practice here at Rakuyo that kind of help encourage that ramification. I kind of like to think of how we do bonsai as like the tree's going to do all the work itself. We're creating an environment for the tree to do that work for us. So give it good water, good fertilizer, good light, and do things at the right time, and the tree's going to perform and do things kind of, you know, bonsai kind of happens on its own if you create the right conditions for it.
Yeah, I do feel like a lot of the trees, and definitely this styrax is one of them in this garden, sort of need momentum, and you're always giving them momentum. You're always fertilizing them, watering them heavily.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about this tree, it has a lot of growth tips on it, and we are going to defoliate it at least twice a year. And so in those multiple defoliations, it needs a lot of energy to come back for that. So I have to be hitting this with a lot of fertilizer to keep all of these growth points happy. And this tree actually has less growth tips than this other one that we're about to trim back. But you know, this other tree is maybe 3 to 5 years ahead of the previous one. And so you can see like it's denser, the leaves have more refinement. I'm doing the same exact thing to this one as I did to the last tree. I'm going in and just nicking back the strong growth so that the weak growth can kind of play catch up a little bit. It's kind of just evening the scales. Maybe this is what socialism looks like in plants. But it's just kind of, like I said, evening the scales so that everything kind of has a chance to evenly succeed.
Do we have any fear of what might happen if we were to get an early frost, maybe very early October?
Yeah, what we'll do moving forward on a tree like this is everything is going to be pinched. So when I see new growth coming out, I'm going to pinch it. And what that pinching is going to do is it's going to lignify the growth that's retained behind the pinch. And so that's what I'm doing on here is anything that's kind of getting nibbled back, that thing I'm nibbling back to is all the energy is going to go into the 1 or 2 leaves that get left behind.
It was going to have to lignify anyway, right?
They were going to have to lignify anyway, but this is kind of forcing them to do it a little faster and more on my time scale than with the tree's natural time scale. And so it's going to kind of set those buds that we care about, not spend so much energy making all these outer leaves and buds that we're going to cut off. But it's going to kind of focus in on those strong ones while at the same time creating a little bit of vigor for things that are being left to run that are on the weaker side.
Yeah, we're filling that bucket. Shoots, looks like. It's too bad we couldn't take cuttings from these. In a different part of the season for sure, right?
Yeah. And they do okay from cuttings. They're not kind of guaranteed, but they're not impossibly difficult. But styrax, like I said, it's a really strong candidate for bonsai just because, you know, it grows in hot climates. It gets very dense and twiggy without a ton of work. The one thing that's kind of tricky about styrax is that it doesn't tolerate shade. The leaves of the tree don't tolerate shade. And that's kind of a trend on a lot of trees that grow in hotter and thrive in hotter climates is the interior leaves don't have a lot of patience for shade.
And we are not shaded here. I mean, we've just got this shade cloth.
We do have the shade cloth up.
And this is which percentage is this?
I mean more shade from just all the leaves.
Oh, self-shading.
Interior canopy shading.
Right.
And so the reason that we actually have to defoliate these a lot is because if something gets shaded out on the interior, it's going to die. So that's the other reason that I want to nibble back all this long growth.
It feels like a very real-time species.
It's it's one that you can't be too lazy about. You know, a beech tree has a thicker leaf and more, you know, tolerant of shade on the foliage, so we can get away with a beech leaf being shaded out. We can't on these, so it's another reason that it's a good idea to come in and kind of nibble this growth back, even though it's not, you know, the main kind of pruning window of the growth season. So again, really short work. Didn't need a lot. You know, I'll wait for, you know, some of the slower stuff to then grow out too. I'll come back in and do the same process. Our guard dog Birch just heard a potential intruder, so he's running off to check on that. But yeah, we'll go through and we'll we'll just kind of keep knocking back anything that's trying to grow overly strong because, like I said, we want really balanced, even growth at this stage of development.
It's interesting that we've done this on both on a beech, which is quite a northerly, wintry tree, and we've done this on the Styrax, which is quite a sort of southern Japan, Taiwan, hot climates, California, whatever, like places like
I'll
that.
do this on any tree that's more in kind of ultra refinement mode. So on any tree that has really mature canopy, I don't want to have things running kind of too long or out of proportion.
Right.
So,
and this isn't really pruning.
This isn't really pruning. This is kind of more growth management.
And I guess it would be a little bit of a tall order in some cases maybe to do pruning right now. And that's why we have that.
Doing pruning right now is not ideal because if I prune a lot of these branches back more heavily, that's really the more heavy the pruning I do, the more strong the response is going to be from the tree. So
big cuts,
this
big
is really
response.
just kind of growth management rather than trying to really stimulate a second round of growth. So yeah, let's move on to another tree that can use a little bit of this. We have here a sweet gum. This is a liquid amber. It's the American variety of liquid amber. Need the step stool to get up here, but
very familiar leaves to anybody who lives in the suburbs of Oregon.
Yeah,
Star-shaped.
Star-shaped leaves. A lot of people confuse this with Japanese maple.
Mm-hmm.
The way to tell it's not Japanese maple is obviously look at the trunk or look at the growth pattern. The growth pattern is alternate leaf rather than opposite leaf. But I have a few things running up here on top. So again, same as the other few trees. I'm just going to come back in and just retain a little bit of the runners, but knock the main kind of parts of those runners off.
And it's almost like initially I look at it and I see, oh, it looks like pruning, but what you're cutting through is green, fleshy tissue.
It's green, fleshy, young stuff that's growing unevenly from the rest of the tree.
So still technically pinching.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a late pinch. It's not a pinch that's done at the precise right time, but it's the next best thing. It's kind of like that saying, if the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago, but the next best time is right now.
Yeah.
The best time to pinch this was when that growth was a little bit more soft and fleshy, but the next best time is right now because I still, my goal is not to have a few branches running and creating imbalance. I want to kind of balance everything out. So anything that's growing that's a little on the stronger side, we're just going to come back in, knock that back so that we create more kind of balanced growth everywhere.
And this tree doesn't look like it's in full refinement yet. These are pretty bulky runners, I would say.
And they're kind of it's a coarse tree. So if anything, it makes the case that we should be doing this more is really not letting anything get too far out of proportion on these coarse plants.
Because it'll just run and get really leggy.
And so if we're really trying to create some density, the more nibbling that we can do on it, the better. So I think that gets most of this one. Might be a few things off to the side, nibble back. But again, I want to put the energy into the weaker things that haven't really grown farther back. So that's all I'm doing with this kind of pinching work or late pinching is coming back in and nibbling back to these smaller branches so that they get a little bit of the strength kind of built into them.
And you're not having to actually make too many decisions. And I'm saying this as someone who's followed you around and done these snips quite a bit.
Yeah.
I found that you could just tell me a rule set for just cut back the fleshy stuff back to where the growth begins again. And I don't have to think about it. So it is sort of like you can just run through your garden and do these cuts.
Run through my garden, kind of very low thought process.
So the design of this tree, deciding where that growth should stop, that's been done in the past and you're just kind of building on that, right?
We're doing less design, more kind of just managing the growth. This is total growth management. So we're going to go to the Katsura back here and do the very same thing. This is a tree that you've worked on quite a bit in the past.
Quite a bit.
So same thing, like the top is coming back really strong, so I'm just going to nip these runners back. Now there's another benefit to this too. It's not the main reason that we would ever do this, but one side benefit is that this tree is drying out really fast. And when I nip all these active growth tips off, I'm going to reduce the watering wrist on this tree, which is high right now. This tree is one of the first trees to dry out in the garden, which means it has the most room for air in being missed for watering.
And we're heading into like in Oregon, we're heading into like fire season. The air's very dry. The atmosphere is very, very thirsty. So it definitely gives you a bit of a sort of it lets you relax the garden a little bit in sort of the hardest watering time of the year.
Yeah. So this is just going to kind of catch everything back up to the same pace. So this one doesn't need 3 extra waterings a day. But primarily the reason that we're doing this is, again, is to get more balanced growth. So the stuff that's not really extending is going to get an advantage. The stuff that is extending that's strong is going to get a slight disadvantage because we're coming in and knocking that back.
So you're kind of going back to the design again, right?
Yeah, ish.
More or less.
Anything that's kind of strong and long, we're taking those back so that the weaker stuff, again, has a chance to kind of catch up and grow more evenly. Katsura is a fun species. If you don't grow this at home, this is one of the few non-traditional plants that I think work quite well for bonsai.
I remember reading that this species actually used to exist in Oregon like 15,000 years ago or 11,000 years ago or something like that. Some very old fossils of it have been found here. It doesn't exist here anymore. I don't know if like the ecology of the state would allow it. I'm always struck by how similar this species is to redbud, eastern redbud, or Canadian redbud.
It looks like redbud.
Yeah, and only recently have I kind of figured out how to just at a glance determine like which one is which. But this is my more favorite one.
Yeah,
and they kind of exist in equal proportions in the Oregon suburbs, so you might see both. Yeah, in any particular.
This doesn't get those beautiful flowers that a redbud will get, but I think the fall color is much more beautiful. And the interesting thing about Katsura is it has an aroma in the autumn that is so strange. So when this turns fall color, this tree will put off a scent that smells like cotton candy or burnt sugar or this like buttery, sugary kettle corn type smell. It's really bizarre. And the weird thing too is like if you just walk up, put your nose in it and sniff it, you won't necessarily smell it. But I could be like three rows of benches away and just get a whiff of this come through in the wind, and I just smell this enormous wave of sugary sweetness smell coming from this tree. So it's a really unusual tree. Not many trees in the garden give us a strong scent to take note of, but this one definitely does. So it makes it a little unique in that way.
And while we're at it, why don't we tell the viewers exactly like how we would tell this from redbud, by the way.
Yeah, so number one, this is an opposite leaf plant. So
probably the easiest way, right?
Yeah, so redbud is alternating leaf pattern. Number two, like the leaf shape. A red bud has more of a heart shape to it than these do. These have a little bit more of a rounded shape. What do you think? You notice you've been looking at a few.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that redbud is a lot more sort of the cardoid or whatever you call it, sort of heartish shape, and then this is more of like especially a kind of repeating. One thing I noticed in the suburban plantings is that these have long repeating sequences of roundish leaves, whereas redbud doesn't really have that. Yeah. And also I think that these leaves tend to get much smaller even for street trees, whereas redbud leaves seem to be quite large. Yeah. And then obviously the trunk, the bark is quite different. I'll just quickly go down to the bark of this one that you have next to you, which is like a very striated, kind of almost birchy. It's hard to describe this in terms of other deciduous species in a way.
It's got a rougher bark than
it's rougher
than redbud gets. Something that I'm not going to worry too much about is kind of a long branch kind of lower on the tree. So, I'm going to let those run a little bit more than I will any strength on top, just because the top of this tree is by far the strongest. So I'm going to be more aggressive nibbling back up here than I am the lower part of the tree. But it's kind of a quick and dirty job. There's a few extensions down here. Again, I'm not really going to touch those. Like, that's not, this is not going to if I'm going to have anything disproportionately grow, I want it to be the naturally weaker parts of the tree, which are on a tree, the lower branches. So
Yeah, and so far we're tending to kind of look at growth that could be shading out growth that we care about, and maybe
yeah, and the
this,
top
yeah.
is more
So these bottom
priority.
branches
So
don't
yeah, a
really,
little bit of length down here. Who cares?
yeah.
Like we can either keep it or prune it back a little bit later, but it's not robbing energy from the rest of the plant. So, yeah, let's take a look at a trident forest over here. Yeah, this guy here was defoliated, so similar to the last tree, the last Katsura, that was defoliated as well. So something's coming back really strong after it was defoliated, and so we're gonna again balance this out. So I'm cutting off these strong whippy things and putting that energy into kind of everything else behind it. So I want things to grow more evenly, especially after something's been defoliated. So
I guess in
again,
a forest sometimes you have one tree that's just like super strong and the other ones need some catch up. So it's kind of a theme over and over again. Sometimes it's branches on one tree that are out competing each other. Sometimes it's different trees on one forest that are out competing each other.
yeah, and it can be different scenarios every time. Sometimes we're intentionally letting something run to thicken up, but
Right.
in this case, we've done that in the past. We have some variety built in, so I more so want even growth and even branch strength on everything kind of behind, rather than something is growing, disproportionately. We can look at a Stewardia here behind us. Again, I'm not necessarily concerned with some things running down low on this plant, but the top here, where it will be like the strongest, I'm going to be kind of the most aggressive and nibbling this back. So there's not a lot to do. Like I said, not worth kind of bringing this into the studio to do this, but kind of walking around with a pair of scissors every week or so, you'll find a few kind of edits and adjustments to make.
Yeah, we've only been out here for a few minutes, and yet we've already covered quite a few trees. So it's really quite a nice method. I think it definitely speaks to the value of having a garden where you've made every tree highly accessible.
Yeah.
Although I'm saying this ironically when you're kind of straining to reach to one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you could walk to the other side, and yeah. You're keeping your garden really accessible, and it makes the trees kind of editable, right?
Yeah. And I have bigger trees than most, so obviously that's going to put a height strain on me. But yeah, just coming in, nipping the response for a lot of this growth is kind of important to get the trees again just growing in a more balanced, even pace. So this is a Stewardia pseudocamellia. But this tree here is a monodelpha. But
I noticed there's definitely differences in color of the bark.
Yeah, the bark color. This one here will have the pseudocamellia will have a more kind of lighter color, more kind of peachy kind of color, versus the monodelpha. This one here will have a much more cinnamon, kind of brighter red color.
Did you say peachy or beachy?
This one's a little more peachy. I think this one's quite a bit more intense.
Although the smoothness of this trunk does kind of remind me a little bit of beech, but it also
beachy.
Yeah, but it also reminds me a little bit of like rainbow eucalyptus or tropical trees sometimes that you see in places like Hawaii, where they get this beautiful sort of really smooth bark.
Blackberry attacking me. Yeah, so just coming in and getting a few of these things that are running super strong, knocking them back. That's kind of the theme for pruning that I'm doing this time of year. Is managing on a tree that I'm trying to get overall nice density on, managing the strong runners. And so there's some things like this tree here that we're okay kind of letting everything run.
Right, lots of runners on this one.
Yeah, we're trying to bulk up some branches on there. But on trees like this trinate behind us, on this trinate here, it's had all that bulk done. Now we're just trying to balance everything else behind it. So yeah, I think that's kind of the theme for the work that I do here in the growing season. In the late kind of summer growing season, we're recording this on August 31st.
It's quite late. It's technically past our so-called cutoff date for cutoffs, kind
Yeah,
of pun
yeah, we don't
intended.
want to do a lot of major pruning this time of year, because if we do major pruning, that means that the growth that really is going to be needed for the tree to respond, it doesn't have enough time to lignify, kind of set buds, kind of establish. But the type of pruning that we've been doing today, we're pruning strong stuff off. We're not touching, we're not doing overall pruning, we're not doing kind of heavy pruning. And so any light kind of pruning, or really it's just kind of light trimming, late pinching, that you can kind of do all throughout the growing season. And it's, like I said, it's more of a balancing act, so that you don't have one branch getting super thick and strong and out of proportion with everything else behind it. It's more to just balance the overall growth.
And again, it's in trees where we're not still building basic structure.
Yeah.
It's where we have a lot of structure actually and a lot of detail. We kind of want to keep reinvesting in that detail,
Yeah,
refining
that's
the
right.
detail.
Yeah. So, yeah, the other thing that we're doing this time of year is I'm about to go through and do a big repatching of moss. So you probably noticed in the video, I have a lot of weeds and a lot of kind of torn up moss here in the garden. This is the time of year that the birds come in and wreak havoc. And so I kind of wait for them to finish doing that. They'll come in, they'll kind of like here, for example, I had patched this tree recently and a bird came in and tore up a bunch of sphagnum moss and whatnot. So rather than just go through and kind of fix everything in the garden, I'm going to wait for that kind of bird activity to die down. I'll do major patch jobs if I need to. But once all that kind of dies down, then we'll go through and kind of totally weed through the pots, kind of patch them up. But right now, while the birds are kind of going through and destroying everything, I kind of just kind of frustratingly be at peace with it.
It's still functioning as top dressing.
Still functioning as top dressing,
Right.
so I wait to kind of clean up a bunch of weeds and stuff until after the birds do their damage, which is about another month or so in nest building.
So in sort of the beginning of fall, they're kind of done
Yeah.
wreaking havoc. Okay.
So yeah, but otherwise, like I said, we're just going around doing some trimming to just kind of balance things out. And yeah, if you have any questions about what we did, feel free to drop those in the comment section down below. I want to give a big thanks to Maciek for holding the camera on this episode and asking some good questions. Yeah, you've been through a live kind of rapid fire work tour of my garden. If you're ever passing through Portland, you're more than welcome to send us an email, come by for a visit. But until then, we'll plan on seeing you in the next episode. If you liked this one, hit the thumbs up down at the bottom of the screen. Subscribe, that really helps us and encourages us to put out more content kind of moving forward. So thanks for tuning in. You've been watching Rakuyo's Deciduous Bonsai channel. I'm Andrew Robson. We'll see you next time.